Oh, this is the NT Zone, and this is a video about heuristics and personality. So this goes back to Carl Jung, as well as some of the problems I see within the typology personology communities. So a lot of people don't really understand um, judging and perception because certain institutes, MBTI, socionics. Okay, that was for a joke. But so the certain institutes really mess it up, like how we understand it and so on. But there's actually a very simple way which modern psychology and cognitive science can actually understand it. So back to Carl Jung, he talks about irrational versus rational types. The irrational introvert, the irrational extrovert, the rational introvert, the irrational extrovert, the rational extrovert. And this goes to a significant portion of those chapters on psychological types, where he actually tries to give a general description of the types. Now, why irrational? Well, irrational people, or what typology communities call today the perceptive people, they are using their unconscious a lot more than their conscious to look at sense data, to look at different uh, bits of information. Now, thinking types, they use their minds, the reasoning, to look at facts. They gather facts, but they still use either rational or irrational judgment. But for the thinking type itself, as in the extroverted thinker versus the introverted thinker, they are called rational types. Why are they called rational types? Because they are basically taking knowledge. They are thinking about it slowly. They're trying to get at what can be seen as certainly true, just through thinking. It's a slower process, and so on and so on and so on. So, uh, heuristics versus rational judging. This is a very easy way to look at these things. So, what's the heuristics? They are a series of very subtle, unconscious shortcuts of thinking we use um, to make life easier. Now, everyone can use both. Some people, however, I'd like to put it to you, use more heuristics than others. And you can basically tell just by seeing how people talk about things. Um, People saying, it's basically this way. It's, um, I have seen it myself, and stuff like that. That's how you can tell if someone's using heuristics. And someone who's carefully thinking about things and making choices consciously, they are the ones who are using rational judgment. Now, for this purpose, let's divide these up a little bit more. For the rational judging, feeling versus thinking. Feeling types, people who use a lot more feeling, um, the people who have dominant feeling, they are always on about values, whether it's my values or the values of the group. It doesn't matter, they just want to look at the value judgments. They are not by any means irrational, that's a myth. They think about things, they just think about the abstract values, which means something's good or bad. and so on. In fact, I used to think of extroverted fielders, for example, as pretty shrewd politicians because of this. Um, Thinkers, I've already talked about them some. They're always looking at facts, they're collecting the facts, they're forming, well, the introverted thinker, he forms the theories, he collects data to support the theory, and then he tests the theory. Extroverted thinkers, they gather a whole wide amount of facts, and they kind of just use those facts. They do come up with theories from time to time, but they just want to learn. And so they kind of hoard this information. If you don't believe me, read Carl Jung. When I talk about the types in general, I will talk about it with reference to Carl Jung. I don't think the MBTI community really gives a lot of respect to these particular differences between functions and types. So then you have the heuristic types of people. The sensors, they rely on their sense perception. I have seen it with my own eyes. I know it's true. Um, I remember it this way. Stuff like that. Intuitives. You could possibly be this. I don't quite know. I I mean, it's basically that way. It's it could be that way. So ultimately speaking, you'll hear stuff from like from the intuitive on if this is so, then this is so. I'm using my antecedent, but my main focus is not so much the antecedent. My main focus is on the um, consequent. And so my antecedent basically is unknown to me, but it just seems this way. I don't know why, but it seems this way. So essentially, as I do this, I gather this information unconsciously, and I see that some things seem to work. I can't tell you why, but they just seem to be that way. And so that's just how intuition works in um, the heuristic model, I think. Of course, heuristics and with the sensing and intuition, if we look at the philosophical definitions, um, intuition are inferences based off of sensation and so on. But so they're very connected. But if you are focusing too much on the consequence, not so much on the antecedent, the logic gets messed over because you're always focusing on, well, it seems that way. It seems like it could end up that way. My gut feeling tells me it's going to end up that way. Or, it could be this, it could be that. I don't know which. But if you're focusing more on the antecedents, that's just how it is. So you see that there's a incomplete model of thought processes which happens within the heuristics, whereas with the rational judgment, the feeling people, the thinking people, it tends to be slower, it tends to be more, I gather information, and as I'm gathering this information, I'm learning. I will tell you, based off of what I can find, whether or not this is true, whether or not it is correct, whether or not it is right. And so I can look at both the antecedent, the consequence, but I'm looking at it slowly. I'm gathering the data first. I'm not just jumping to a conclusion. So this is a very simple model. Just pay attention to how people think, how they carry themselves. Are they rushing to conclusions? Um, or are they slowly taking in information over time, looking at different data points and making decisions from there by using their minds as opposed to their heuristics? And I think then you'll find a more empirical and easier model of Jungian typology based off of current understandings of psychology. But this is really just a theory of mine. I really would like to hear your thoughts, your comments. I will post more videos in the future, of course. Thank you for watching.